Hello everyone. First of all, if you like this video at all, hit that like button down there. It really helps out the channel, and feel free to subscribe, though I imagine many of you are. Regardless, let's go into a story. So a story that I thought I'd share because it was interesting, and it will lead me to a few more points as well. So I was going for student advising to the arts department counselor, or one of the arts department's counselors. I met this dude who is, I'm 31, he's probably around 25, 24, maybe 23. Black dude with dreads. And went to the elevator, went up, and then it's on the third floor, I believe, maybe second. But we got off on the same floor and went opposite directions. And then I saw him coming down the hallway towards the same place I was going but from the opposite direction. And we both went into the counseling office for academic advising. So he sits somewhere and I sit somewhere, and he looks over and he says, I'm not going to say verbatim, but he said, hey man, can I ask you what your jewelry means? Like, it obviously means something to you. Which, first of all, is a good thing. I hate small talk. I hate when we hear, somebody ask you how you are and you just say, oh, I'm good, how are you? And then, even if you're not good, you say it. I hate small talk. So, taking it back, I'm like, interesting. So I have a conversation with this dude, and he asks about, my spirituality and my heritage and all that. And when I get to the part where I'm like 9% African, by the way, it's so weird with genetics, because like the genetics test, at first I started out 5% African, then it went all the way up to 9 slowly. It's almost like the more genes that are put in, the more I get more African points. Interesting. He said, okay, do you know what tribe? I'm like, yeah, so apparently Senegal, and from the Congo, and Bantu. So, by the way, Senegal is like a whole nation. It doesn't seem like it's very mapped out yet, because Senegal is not a tribe per se. Congo, it's a little bit more specific, but not as specific as Bantu. And, I got a couple 3 or 4 points in that, in Bantu. He's like, oh shit, man, I'm Bantu. I'm like, oh really? That's crazy, man. He's like, yeah, man, I'm Bantu. That's because I did talk about my African beads, and then I have Thor's hammer, and then I have bracelets of the gods. But the African beads is what probably prompted the conversation. But we talked about it a little bit. I talked about how I had a YouTube channel, and I gave him my YouTube channel. He's like, oh shit, I'll check it out. And he puts his earphones in, hooks up to his laptop, and while we're waiting for counseling or advising, he starts checking it out. And then when he's called, he goes in, and when he comes out, I still haven't been called yet because he went in first. He's like, see you later, brother. And he fist bumps me. I'm like, that's a nice dude. Also, real as hell. Like, how many people are going to ask you about what you're wearing? And at first I was just like, just be nice to me. I'm just like, wait a minute. Even though I have a small amount of Bantu, and he has a much bigger amount, how many things had to happen before this moment happened? So obviously I have a Bantu ancestor somewhere way back. And it's not one of my biggest heritages, but I'm more Native American, and obviously the biggest part is Scandinavian. But how many things had to go right or wrong for us to come out of the elevator, meet from opposite sides, and go into the advising office, and then start talking, and then figure out that we both have at least a little bit of the same blood? And then I started thinking about it even more. I'm like, oh, it's a real ass dude. I really wish more people were real like that, and didn't do small talk. I despise small talk. And then I started thinking about it more. I'm like, there's so much within us that takes so long to resolve or unearth once more. So this leads into another thing that I was going to talk about, which I'm going to talk about now, is that my grandfather on my dad's side is about probably 50% African. Very dark. Obviously has not just Native American blood. No, there's plenty of dark Native Americans. He's actually the only grandparent that I have that's pretty racist towards black people. Think of Uncle Ruckus. Uncle Ruckus, no relation. Some of you know who I'm talking about. Uncle Ruckus from the Boondocks. He's basically a more Hispanic version of that. And my dad told me early on in knowing him, like, your grandfather says some really outlandish things. He didn't use the word outlandish, but that's the word I'm using. Crazy things about black people. And he's pretty racist like Uncle Ruckus. You know, I never spent a whole lot of time with them, but, you know, the times that I did, I was like, I felt a little bit. So in the Boondocks, there's also Huey. And I felt like saying to him, like, Granddad, you're using the colonizational ideas of the oppressor to describe yourself and others because you hate that part of yourself and you don't accept who you are. And that little bit of Huey's stuck in me. I didn't say it, but every time I'm like, oh, and also he's just not a very nice dude. But my grander point is, sometimes we can't just rely upon our parents, our grandparents, our elders to discover ourselves. Sometimes we're just awakened to ourselves. And this is not specific to the African in me, but this is definitely a part of it, for sure. The church did a lot of things. It made a whole lot of deities and spirits into fairies, saints, like trolls, goblins, dead kings. There's a whole lot of things the church relabeled to make it make sense in the idea of the church, in the cosmology of the church. Even did it with my Scottish and Irish in me. And everything that wasn't made into some kind of spirit that made sense in the cosmology was made into either a figment of the devil or a demon or something like that. Because the cosmology had to make sense for the people that they were colonizing. And yes, they even colonized the Viking areas at some point. Didn't work out for one big ship of Christian priests that the Viking king drowned because he said, hey, yeah, come convert us. And then he just drowned the whole ship of like 100 pieces. Anyway, that was surprisingly happy about that. But regardless, they made us rewrite our world. They made us give them our symbols. And then they gave us their interpretation of them. They made us classify our beings, our spirits, our gods, in different ways. The ways that was sanctioned by the church. The church, a long time ago, almost directly after Christ, started becoming an authoritarian power structure that didn't really care about Christ. It was more about making sure everybody is on the same message, and the message is the one that we give you. And there's a lot of people who might watch my videos and see how I work with the dead. And I use Christian prayers. I use Christian holy water, Christian oil. I even have dirt from Jerusalem. I use all of these things for communications with the spirits because I respect them through what they have been taught, through their understanding of their cosmology. I respect the spirits that way, the spirits of the dead. It's the only time I use Christian stuff, but I do communicate with them through Christian things. Besides that, I despise the church. I despise the vast majority of churches out there. Quakers are okay. Quakers, they hit a whole bunch of slaves and got them to freedom. But one thing about the Quaker ideology is that they believe that there's a light within every person, and no matter what path you follow, as long as you follow a path, you can find that light. Quakers are some of the Christians that I actually like a lot. There's other kinds of Christians, Universalist Christians that I like, it's fine. But they have robbed us overall and demanded that we see things their way. You know, it might take a whole bunch of generations, but eventually, those little bits of what a person is will wake up in someone. Whether it's little bits of African, Native American, Viking, they can wake up later on. They can wake up in an individual. And then it's very confusing because, you know, well, my parents are atheists, so I never really got any of that. I think the church beat Christ right out of my father, and my mother always just naturally attracted to nature, not necessarily gods or religion or spirituality, but sometimes things can lay dormant inside of us, and then it'll just hit in a person, and things will wake up. And there's a lot of confusion at first, but you start to find pieces of your way. For instance, Vodou. I found it before I knew my whole genealogy, my ancestry, at least as much as it's been mapped. And I realized that a lot of the places that, you know, Senegal, Congo, Bantu, a lot of those slaves that the Spanish then French took from Africa, made them slaves, took them away, made them work to death, basically. Well, they worked the Taino Indians or Native Americans to death first, not Native Americans, Native Caribbeans. But, and then they brought in enslaved African people, then brought them in. But a lot of those slaves came from places that my ancestry, small as it is on the African side, came from. It's almost like something hitched a ride in me and then woke up at some point. And I don't know if y'all have ever seen American Gods, but this is leading to another point. Anansi, from Ghana. He's a spirit that the African slaves took to the United States in the show. It's American Gods is a show. It's a TV show. And, you know, in the bottom of the slave ship, these are Dutch slavers. There's an African man calling out to Anansi, talking to him. Brought a tear to my eye. And then Anansi manifests. And the thing about Anansi is that he's like the storyteller that's behind all of the story. He can go in the past, present, future. Usually he's associated with Obai, which is Jamaican magic. A lot of people call it black magic, but fuck them. And he starts talking to everybody. He's like, let me paint a picture for you. 100 years from now, you're fucked. 100 years later, you're fucked. 100 years after that, you're still getting gypped out of a job and shot at by police. And the only good thing that's going to come out of this is that a lot of the tobacco that you're farming for these motherfuckers is going to cause them cancer. And then, you know, there's a whole lot of other stuff he says. But he's like, there's this one guy that's getting more and more angry. And then Anansi looks at this guy. He's like, I like this one. He's getting angry. Angry gets shit done. And then another person in this slavehold, he's like, if we burn the ship, then we'll all drown, we'll die. He said, you're already dead, motherfucker. At least make it mean something. It's powerful. So I've seen a lot of different people react to this clip, and I didn't give you all the details of the whole clip, but just look up American Gods, Anansi speech on a slave ship. You'll find it. But there's two reactions I've seen people have to this. One, they're like, oh, this spirit thing is vile. They shouldn't listen to him. Ugh. And then there's other ones who are like, start getting more and more angry, start agreeing. And I find myself to be one of those people who's like, the more I talk to them, like, getting just as angry as that guy in that hold that starts to get angry, that starts to get ready to get shit done. And I'm not sure if it's all family. Is it nurture or nature? How much of what is in our blood can cause emotion, can cause reaction in us to something? I would say that most of the time it's, you know, if your family or if you have liberal leanings or conservative leanings or this kind of leanings, that kind of leanings, but sometimes you feel your blood boiling and you stop needing to breathe as much. You have a visceral reaction to injustice. And a lot of the time, not most of the time, but a lot of it, there's something in your blood just boiling. Something within you that is reacting. Something that you can't really explain, that you can't completely understand, but something that you feel within yourself. And you feel the same thoughts. I want to get shit done too. Or I feel the injustice. And it's activating in me. Though this is a supposition and opinion. Not saying it for sure, but sometimes you can just feel it in your blood. And it's there for you when you need it. It's there for you when you're willing to accept it. And sometimes the nature of our spirit is beyond both the nature of our immediate existence and our family and the nature of our immediate soul. Sometimes our soul, many souls that many lifetimes that our soul has been in, sometimes they come to the forefront. They come to the front of our consciousness and we feel them. We can't explain it, but we feel them. They're there. And all those lives that we've been before mean something. They are something, and they are in us. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. You can share this video wherever you like. Hit that thumbs up down there. It really helps out the channel. Feel free to leave comments, questions, concerns in the comment section below on YouTube. Most importantly, find yourselves, because you're the only one who can do it. Thank you very much, and hope all of you